Here I am. Here I am. Here I am. Here I am. Button on the chat, giving enough time for people to come in here. And I got to kill some things in here real quick while everything's getting loaded. Because gotta have everything shut down, everything. So, but it's going to be, hopefully it's going to be a good show. I've had a real long day and I've been looking forward to this. Starting a little early gives time for people to come in here, get situated in here, and hopefully people will be able to say hello. Uh, I do have chat open. Uh, I am paying attention to it. So, which is kind of good. I do have a public chat that is open to everybody. Um, it might take me some time to answer, and if it does, I do apologize. It's hard to keep track of everybody. Okay, let's see. All right, there we go. Now we're getting out there. So today, so lots happened with me in the last 4 months. Actually, a lot. I've been blessed a lot. Uh, it's kind of like coming to the end of a lot of things that have happened with me over a long period of time. And uh, my faith in God has brought me to a point where I've talked to a lot of people about the events that led up to where I'm at right now in my life. And so if I get off track here, it's only because it's part of the story. So if anybody knows me, I do get rambling sometimes. So it's only because my mind gets all over the place. So I in October, right around October 15th, I went in and had surgery on my left arm. I had severe neuropathy that was due to COVID in 2020 when I got COVID. And it was in pretty bad shape. My arm was uh, very, very painful and had absolutely no dexterity and no feeling in my fingertips, hardly at all. Couldn't play guitar anymore. Uh, um, could barely hold on to any nut screws or anything. And now it's I can do some of that stuff and I'm able to touch a guitar again, but as far as dexterity and stuff like that goes, I don't know if I'll ever get that back. But over time, I'm pretty sure I will. Strength wise, it's gonna again, and it'll probably come back over time. The neuropathy part, however, is very painful, and I don't think that's gonna go away anytime soon either. So, was the operation a success? Some parts, yes, and other parts, I believe not. Um, but again, with everything, it takes time to heal. 61 years old, but I'm sure that I got a lot of healing ahead of me yet. So, anyway, so the right leg stimulator. So, right after I had operation on my left hand, I had uh, the stimulate or I had the operation on a Monday on this my left hand, and then on that Friday I had a temporary stimulator put in my two leads put in my spinal cord. And the way they do it is they put these two wires that have all these like little pads, and they put right up in your spinal cord. Dangest thing in the world. I just blows my mind how they're able to do this, but they do. You think, man, they're going to paralyze me for sure, but they don't. They know what they're doing. So they put it up there, and I had to wear this belt around me, and it was the most uncomfortable thing. I mean, I had this big old thing in the middle of my back, and what it was make sure that those leads don't come out. And they had this pack that had the stimulator, and it was just very uncomfortable. But what the trial was supposed to do is to find out if the stimulator was going to help with your with that, and it did. It really did. It helped with the pain, and the 8 days, I think I had it in for 8 days. It did. It helped. So I thought for sure that we were going to have some success there. So I had to have it removed on the 8th. And then I had a 2-week period where I waited to get my surgery date, which went pretty quick. And I was able to get that. So I was able to get that scheduled in. And then I had the permanent stimulator put in my spine. And again, but the only difference they told me coming into what's different from the permanent to the from the temporary was that the permanent one, I would have to get adjustments throughout, the first year and stuff like that. So, and that has been true. I've had 3 adjustments since I got the stimulator put in. You're supposed to be very careful. Can't do any lifting. Can't do any bending over. You have to be extremely careful the first couple weeks, at least for the first 4 to 6 weeks after surgery. So, of course, me being me, first day or next day I got out of surgery, I had to run to the store, and it was during that blizzard, that snowstorm, and wind caught the door of the van and slammed the door right into the incision part. I was okay, but I told everybody that story, and then a couple days later, I fell flat on my butt, and I thought for sure I'd lodged those wires, and they checked it out, and everything was fine. So, but neither here or there. It was quite the ordeal, but all through that, what brings me up where I'm at today is that um, I'm going back to work Monday, finally, and that's pretty cool. So, how did I get to here? Well, there's a little bit of a little bit of thought process here, and if I'm doing something, you see me, it's just the way I got to talk because I got to concentrate on this. This story is very good story, and I want everybody who's listening to understand that it's this story is going to be long, and if you're going to be in for this, you better you'll be able to stop and go if you want to listen to the recording. I believe that that's going to be the best way to listen to this, and to because this is going to be the first time where I'm able to concentrate a little bit better. Like I have friends I've told it to, but this time it's a little bit more detailed, and it's not in order. And when I mean it, it's like how things happen. I'm just going to tell you bits and pieces and parts because um, it's really hard for me to put it in order because it's all over the page, and that's how it was in the dream. So I'm gonna tell you exactly what happened. But now there's gonna be bits and pieces I'm gonna tell you that of accounts from my family, my wife, and uh, even my father and stuff like that. So uh, just got to bear with me, and we'll get through it. It's not going to be that long, but it's going to be long enough. So, as a lot of you know, in 2020, I got COVID, and and that was a nasty, nasty bug. And prior to this event taking place with me, I there was a lot of things going around about the bug at that time, and it was said to have, it was just like the flu, and there was other things, and yes, we're not going to get into the BS about it, and that's not what we're here about. So um it was a bad bug. And even myself, I knew people who were getting it, and it was like kind of like, oh, it was kind of, lost their taste, and they got a headache and things like that, but never heard anybody get like really nasty, at least no one around me. You heard stories, like you would hear stories like on the news. You would hear people like end up on a respirator, or not a respirator, maybe, what's that called, whatever. Anyway, so um and what got me is you'd hear all these stories, but you really wouldn't know which one, like all how what was true. And then you hear people like, well, ventilators, that's what it's called. So anyway, so you'd hear people to be on a ventilator, and then people would be on ventilators, wouldn't survive, and all these things. You just heard it all the time. And then you'd hear people who didn't get sick at all, and then you hear it was all, like all made up. You heard all these things that were going on at this time. And so for me, it was kind of like I didn't know where I stood. All I knew is I didn't want it to disrupt my life, and I took it very seriously. Uh, but then again, um, I was already kind of germophobic, but not in the way that I should have been. But because I had worked for a small engine place, and I got sick all the time because I was handling people's money, credit cards, and all that stuff. And I was seeing like I always got sick all the time. So, but even then, I used to, use hand sanitizer all the time. That's about the extent of it. And I didn't like touch money anymore, or people's grody stuff. I just didn't like doing that. So anyway, so when that COVID came out, it was tough. And so the company that I worked for at the time, during it was the first shutdown. The company, the owner of the company, come up to me, and he says, "Hey, is there any way you can figure out how to shut the whole office down, so that everybody's got to be able to work from home? No problem. We can make that happen." It's exactly what happened. So everyone was able to work from home, make phone calls, work off from their computers, and everything was just perfect. And uh, I and I don't mean to do that. Yeah. So what was actually happening at the time? So when that started happening, everything seemed to work really cool. We made it, I think it was like maybe 2 weeks off. I think it was. I'm not totally sure. I don't remember. But I didn't get sick at all. I and my wife, however, she was going to work. She worked at a um, at a Dollar General down the street from us. But she was always, really taking good care of herself, not getting, too bad. But I think it was during that time she wasn't even working. I'm not totally sure because that was that major shutdown. So uh, the funny part about it was is when we went back to work, and so we went back to work, and it was probably, I'm not going to say, maybe not even a week. One day I was at work and I was like, I had this tickle in my throat. You know how you go, and it started getting a little bit more. And I uh, told one of the girls who I work with, and I said, I think I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to go and work from home the rest of the day. The only reason why I did that is because everybody was very, very, very critical. If you're getting sick, go home. That just there was no, just go home, and that's the way I did it. So here it is. Here's where it begins. Okay, so I go out to my car. I start driving home, and the last thing I remember is I remember driving through a town that we called Allendale, and that's it. That's the last thing I remember. And the next thing I remember is waking up, walking in a parking lot of a gas station. All right. Try to figure that one out. And I was confused. I didn't know what to think. I was kind of like, I, I couldn't figure out why I was where I was at. All right. You ever have you ever have one of those moments where you just feel like, wait a minute, wasn't I just driving? And then you just kind of just dismiss it right away. Like, and I was looking for the car, and it's like, I couldn't figure it out, and it's like time was moving, but it went from being fall time to being like summer time, you know, like it felt like that. It was still fall, but the one thing I noticed, the first thing I noticed was I was barefoot. I didn't have I didn't have any shoes on, and I couldn't figure that out. And it's like I was really confused. Now, pay attention to this because this stuff is going to make a lot of sense further on down the road. So I didn't know what to think, and I'm kind of walking around, and I'm kind of like in a daze, and so how in the world did I get here? And I couldn't figure it out for the life of me. But I still had that thought of leaving work, like, and I'm thinking that confusion, that it was just this huge, huge confusion. And all of a sudden, like, I looked up and I noticed, like, that's the first time I noticed it was like dark. It was like dark out. It was um kind of like later in the evening time. And that's when I just was like completely just totally like really confused then. And I just didn't know how it was. The reason why I'm lingering on this is because that's what it felt like. I just want you to get that feeling of confusion. So I'm going to move fast now. So eventually what happened was a police officer, it was like sheriff's department pulls up, and there was two officers in the car. They asked me who I am. They end up taking me to a detention center, it was like a detention center, and I end up staying there for like what seemed like hours, and it was. And they ended up like running some tests on me, and they ended up saying that I was contaminated, and they did some other things to me, and they ended up calling my son. And so my son, which to this day, he'll tell you he denies it, but I to this day it felt so real that he came and picked me up, and then I went, and there's some things that they did, and we went back to his house. I ended up spending the night, and he drove me home in the morning, right? And I'm thinking, and when I got home, my wife wasn't there, and I walked in the house. There's my dogs, Coda and Winston, and I looked, and lo and behold, there's my car. My car is there. Like, how did I get up? How in the world did I get up north? My son didn't even know how I got up north. And like I said, I'm going pretty quick. There's a lot of dialogue in between all this. Believe me. One of my friends knows a lot of it though. But the thing about it is I just didn't know, you know. And then so jump ahead some time here, and Robbie took off, and I'm sitting in the house. I'm walking around. I think I went and got a glass of milk, and I went in the bedroom and laid on the bed, and the boys laid on the bed with me, and I took a nap. And next thing you know, I wake up, and there's my wife, and she's saying, like, what time did you get home? And I go, just a couple hours ago. Where you been? And she goes, I was at work. And I go, okay. Where was I? How did I get up there? And she goes, where were you? And then I go, well, I was, Robbie gave me a ride home. And she goes, she goes, everybody was looking for you. And I'm like, what? What? What it turned out. So here's the story. Apparently, I'd been missing for like 3 to 4 days. And I'm like, and I thought, see, this is where it just gets really freaky. But I'd been missing for 3 to 4 days, and I thought, to this day, I still think it just feels like they were just messing with me, And so I said to her, I go, come on, man, quit doing that. And she just, yeah, you're, where were you? And I go, I'm telling you, I was coming home from work. I was feeling sick and everything. And I ended up at Robbie's up. It was actually like up by Hesperia. And she goes, what were you doing up there? And I go, I don't know how I got there. You guys just like this whole freaking out, like Twilight Zone thing. So anyway, all of a sudden, it's like her and I are just going head to head on this whole thing. And all of a sudden, it felt like the ground and like a vibration the ground started vibrating. And I hear like I thought was the garbage truck coming down the road. That's about what it sounded like. And so I went to the door, and there's these black trucks, like kind of like 4-wheel drive, big box trucks driving towards the house. And it's like military style, kind of. And I thought, whoa, what's these guys doing here? And they come in, and they're out there, and the trucks are like, I mean, they look cool, but I've never seen them in this area before. I didn't know who they were. And so they were parked like in like 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, and then 2-2. That's about, I think that was the end of them. No tanks or anything like that. Just uh, one. Well, no, one of them was like, I think two of them were SUV kind of style, if I remember right. Uh, yeah. So anyway, they some bored people got out of um, two of the vehicles, and they come walking up through the yard, and of course, Coda and Winston are going stupid crazy, and I stepped out on the steps, and I said, "Can I help you guys with something?" And one of the guys, he just stood there and looked at me, and he goes, "Are are you Robert?" And then I said, "Yeah." And he said my last name. I go, "Yep." And he goes, "Do you live here with your wife?" Said her name, and I said, "Yep." He goes, "You got two dogs?" Said their names, and I go, "Yep." He goes, "You work?" And he went through this whole list, said who my dad was, my sisters, all the stuff. Even said one, like two or three of my friends, where I worked at. Like, I think I already said that. Anyway, so I'm like, okay. And he goes, I go, "What's this about?" And then a woman was ask, asking for my wife. And I said, "She's in the house. May we speak to her?" And I was like, "No, you may not. Who are you people?" And they weren't really, to be honest with you, they weren't threatening at all. I mean, they were just their outfits for like, I mean, the trucks were black, but there was like these emblems on the band, and to just I that's why I kind of wanted, like, I wouldn't mind being hypnotized to see if possibly I could figure out what those emblems were. It'd be really cool because I can see them, but I can't describe them. That's the only thing. But now remember, this is a dream. Okay. Well, I'll explain it here in a second. All right. So at this point, okay, I'm thinking to myself, who in the heck are these people in my mind? And my mind's going a zillion miles an hour, like I've never seen before in my life. And I'm starting to get scared. I'm thinking, like, these people must be like the FBI or something. What did I do? And I'm trying to think of things in my past that I did, something I didn't know what was going on. So the lady was very polite, and she says, "Can I please go talk to your wife?" And I said, "Okay, fine." So I stepped back. She went inside the door, and she went in, and I heard her say, you know, called out my wife's name. And the dogs instantly stopped barking, instantly. Like, and I could hear their clickety click of their paws and stuff. But here's the thing. I then says, "What is this about?" And he was very polite, and he says, "Sir," he goes, I'm just going to be flat out." He goes, "You have been selected to take part in one of the biggest things that um, the world could give anybody, and the government has come up with a way to help with overpopulation of the world." And I said, "Oh, great. You're going to kill us." That's what I'm thinking in my mind, you know? And my nose itches, by the way. So I thought to myself, man, no, we're dead. We're dead. We're dead. We're dead. We're dead. That's what I'm thinking. So anyway, what he does is he's standing there, and he explains this thing, and this big old operation is called the Big Freeze. And what they do is they take you. This is where it gets really freaky. And they put you into what's called as a freeze. And while you're in this freeze, you get to choose what you get to do when you come out of the freeze. Meaning you get to do whatever you want, and you will not be sick. So if you are sick, you won't be sick when you come out of this freeze. So I'm thinking to myself, well, sounds good. I mean, but how long do I have to be in this freeze? And so this guy goes to me, he goes, 5 years. You're in it for 5 years. And then the next cycle of people go in for 5 years. The next cycle of people go in for 5 years. The next cycle of people go in for 5 years. And the cycle continues to go and go and go until basically it's kind of like what I found out earlier down the road after this. It's almost like what they do is it ends up cleansing the world of all the evil, of all the sickness and everything else in the world. And I was like, okay. But anyway, I don't want to get that far ahead, but I think I spoiled it already. But so I'm sitting there, this guy is like telling me this, and that's not my mind going. I'm thinking, this is scary. And I said, well, do we have a choice? And he goes, unfortunately, no, you don't have a choice. And I'm thinking, okay, I guess. But what about my house? What about my dogs? And he goes, your house, you don't need to worry about that no more. You don't need to worry about your house. When you, in 5 years, you will be given a house, you'll be given transportation, you'll be given a new life. You won't have to worry about none of this stuff. And none of this here matters. None of it matters. And I'm like, okay. Like, what about clothes? You mean clothes? Everything? Everything? And he says, everything. You don't, nothing here matters anymore. And in my mind, I can still, the funny part about it is I can still remember that thought in my mind where none of this makes sense. It's like I'm supposed to walk away from everything, like everything in your house. Try to imagine getting up and walking out that door and leaving everything behind. And I mean, not even taking your phone, just being gone. Try to think of that. So the funny part about it is I'm sitting there, that thought process in my head going, holy crap, man. I'm about to walk away from everything. And then I go, wait a minute, what about my dogs? And he just looks at me with this look on his face. He goes, this is gonna sting. And that's exactly what he said. I remember that. We're gonna have to destroy your dogs. And I said, no way, you're not killing my dogs. And he said, hold up. What we're gonna do is we're gonna extract the DNA from your dogs. And in 5 years, we will make sure that your dogs are with you. Now, I know that part of it sounds really weird, but later on you'll understand what it meant. Okay. We might not even ever get to that part. So just so you know that the boys end up with me in the end too. So anyway, because there's just too much of it. Way too much of it. Just so you know, okay. So anyway, let's just push forward. So needless to say, we end up at this facility, all right? And they're flying us by helicopters, and they have me and my wife in a container. and she's on one side of the container, I'm on the other side of the container, and we're flying. And she is they got her plugged in to all these wires and tubes and everything. Same with me, all plugged in. And me, the nurse, they all got their mask on and everything. Now, see, now here's a here's something that I've thought about a lot, and you might want to think about this too. This is kind of interesting in a way. When I look back right now, and I think back about that time in the store or in the hospital. I'm sorry, the store. I saw something pop up on the said store, but in the hospital with the nurses, people sometimes when I'm in the when I talk about I said they find out that I was in a coma. They asked me, do you ever remember times when you were awake? And I think there's some of the times there was, and sometimes I think it was like some of the nurses and doctors and stuff that were unmasked, because sometimes it just seemed that way. But you have to dig down really deep, because the reason for it is it makes sense, because it seems like half the time I was in my dream doing things, and some of my dream it seemed like I was in the hospital. So it makes perfectly good sense. So, but needless to say, we end up falling asleep. And then the next thing I remember is I wake up and I'm completely like and utterly not even the word I don't even know how to explain it. It's like waking up and there's these people around you. They're all around you. All these people around you saying, Robert, are you okay? Everything's fine. Just take deep breaths, Robert. It's like, oh, you made it. Everything's gonna be fine. And I'm like, where's my wife? She woke up. She's good. She's right over here. She's recovering great. You guys made it, and blah blah blah. And it was like, it was actually kind of exciting, to be honest with you, because your mind's just like, and it's like I go, I got a headache. I got such a splitting headache, and she's like, yes, that's normal. You guys made it really good. And then it's like I remember like falling back asleep, and they're like trying to shake me to wake me up. No, don't fall asleep. Try to stay awake. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, man, I can't believe I made it. Is everything still attached? I remember saying something about, is everything still attached? And yep, everything's fine. And then one of the nurses says, you're in like a quadrant 6, and your wife is in quadrant 2. And I'm like, what does that mean? And it's like, and here again, you're in a different galaxy. Like, we were in different galaxies. And I'm like, now I'm gonna tell you something. This story never used to be this way, because the only reason why it got added to it, because that was the first time I found out that why my wife went to a different area than I did, because the new area that we went to, which I'm getting to right now, because see, when I woke up in one galaxy, and my wife woke up in a different area of the galaxy. So I'll get to that in a minute, okay? So when I woke up, and it was like, we're talking maybe a few days after I'd woke up, I kept asking them for my wife, and they said, finally, they just said that she had moved on to her, what she wanted to do, her career, and that I would join her later on. And the funny part about it was time didn't seem to be an issue. There never, it's like time didn't exist at all, to be honest, because there was a lot of times, there was a lot of moments where it never seemed like there was a time, like a time frame. It was always like, not even like days and night. Well, there was days and nights because there was darkness and day. So, but it was just really weird how everything worked. So, but I do know that, like, the next big thing that happened is I was in a pickup truck with this one woman, and I believe her name was Caitlin, and Caitlin was driving me out to a farm out outskirts of some city, and she was asking me questions like how, how I felt and everything, and I was fine. And then we were coming down this one road, and then we parked, and she introduced me to this coordinator of some kind. And I guess what it turned out to be, she's the type of the person who receives new incomers, people who are incoming. And she asked me a question. She says, Have you figured out what you want to do with your, you have like 90-day period where you get to figure out what you want to do with your career?" And I said to her, "Yeah." I said, "What I would like to do is I'd like to train dogs for the military, or not the military, for the police." And she goes, "Well, we don't have any openings for the police, but because of your background, we would like to, um, yeah, and okay, let me get this. I got to get this right. Because of your background, that you grew up and um, around animals and stuff like that, how would you feel if you were to train in um, our task force?" And I said, Okay, that's fine," because I thought task force was the police. I thought that had something to do with it or whatever. So anyway, so she goes, "Okay, so that would be fine." So she goes, "We'll get you signed up, blah blah blah." Again, there was no time, but the next thing I know, I'm being shipped off to go to this facility to train, and I got to meet my dogs. I got to meet, and guess what I named my dogs? You never guessed. So I named both my dogs Winston and Coda. Yep. And in my mind, somehow embedded in my mind, that I thought those dogs were both Coda and Winston. But later on, I wish I could tell you the whole entire dream. It would be so cool. I wish I'd had the time to do it. But anyway, so as the story continues, this saga continues. I want to, like, now I want to go back. So I want to go back, and I want to tell the story what other people were seeing. So on my way home from work. So apparently, when I got home from work, I had told my wife I wasn't feeling well. She um, also wasn't feeling well. She was actually sick. And me, myself, I was, um, I'm sorry, someone's being funny. Um, I was, um, I was feeling worse, actually, by the time I did get home, she said. And she goes that I went right to bed. and she said she sat watched TV, and then later that night I came out and I sat in my chair, and the next day I was having a hard time breathing, like kind of like I couldn't lay down in the bed without having a hard time, and then when I'd sit up in the chair, I was having a hard time, and so the next night I was, I guess, apparently getting worse to the point where the next morning I told my wife to call 911. And apparently I went in the hospital and went into ICU right away. And they ended up putting me into an induced coma. Um, had some issues, put me on a ventilator. Uh, I was in a coma for quite a while, and I spent, just so you know, I spent uh, 140 days in the hospital over this whole thing. So, um, but to be like out of it from October 2nd, almost 8.5 weeks in a dream world, um, that's freaky, because I'm telling you, your brain, where I was, like I said, I'll jump back into the dream. I'll tell you some bits and pieces of it, but I'm telling you right now, your brain does some crazy things, some really crazy things. I mean, you can go on some wild trips. And I think it's, what I think is kind of cool, in my opinion, is the chemicals that must be, I mean, the chemicals they use to put you into an induced coma, I get it, but it's the chemicals that our brain uses to make us dream like we do. So, but I have a different theory here, and I want to get into this because I want to talk about some parts of my dream now that I want to get away from this part. So there's this part in the dream that when I graduated from training, I found out that we weren't just a task force for taking people out. We were a task force for basically going out and trying to bring people in. And it had to do with, I'm just gonna this is where I'm gonna skip like a lot because there's so much detail in this. So it has to do with, the tribulation and revelations, and the book of Daniel with some prophecies. It has to do with a lot of darkness. It has to do with a lot of much, much evil that you've never seen before in your life. And that's why it's really important, because during these times in my dream, I believe that I was between what would my vision of heaven would be, and what the vision of what the tribulation and what Earth's going to be like during the worst possible times. And a lot of people, I've talked to some people about this, and I think, there's a lot of scripture in the Bible, and I hear a lot of I hear a lot of really good content creators. They talk about this stuff all the time, and it's kind of sometimes it's disappointing to me. And what I tried to do is ever since I had my coma, I've never listened to another person's story about their coma. And it's because I don't want it to I don't want it to tarnish my story. But I I honestly believe in my heart with every fiber of I just cannot believe that I didn't see what heaven's going to be like because I had no pain. I had no memory of what was left behind. I saw my mom, you know, and things like that. I thought were really cool. I got some text messages here. I saw my mom uh, and some others. Okay, so um, questions like some people ask me like, did you see God? No, I didn't. Did you see Jesus? Not that I know of. Did you see pure evil? Yes, I saw pure evil. I saw evil like on that you wouldn't believe. Um, did I see? I saw. I saw some pretty cool stuff. Angels. I saw some really good angels, and I saw some really cool. It's like this. It's like what I was doing. I got to do some really cool stuff. I should have did this like when I wasn't so tired. But anyway, so my job was to bring people like go out and find people who were good people who fell short, and people who were kind of like you know those those bad little boys and girls who got kind of off track and they're kind of running and they don't know what to do. They're just confused and stuff like that. And I had the the absolute power to be able to make the decision whether to give them, you know, basically they're so far close to the edge that let me put it this way, everybody was already taken in. Everybody's already been taken. The ones left behind have already been left behind. These are the ones that are just the last the last of them. You know what I'm saying? The stragglers, that's who they are. And there's gonna be some that are just gonna be so stubborn, but and it's gonna be up to me to decide. And believe me, there's gonna be some people that are just I have to make that decision whether to just walk away or to send them. And to send them means to send them forward. And some of them don't like it, but they'll it's better than the alternative, and they don't want the alternative, you know. And but that's what I did, and then I would do that, and then I would get like a break. I'd get a vacation, so I get to hang out in uh, I get to hang out in paradise. You know, actually, there is a funny part. My son will die laughing right now. Um, there's this part in this is where things get like as art. I think that's what they call it, as art. My son is a big like Marvel fan, and I think this was more of a tribute to him than he knows. So I think what the cool part about it was I got there was this like the guy, the guy that plays Thor, the guy, he was Thor in my dream movie star, and so was there was a few what's her face was there, um, and there was like this movie being shot, and we got to go surfing. I was surfing, and I told my son I got to go surfing with Thor and Azar, whatever they call that. And it was really funny because my son was like, "You lost your mind, Dad." There was a lot of times I could tell you a story about after I come home from the hospital, and my son and my daughter-in-law, God bless their hearts, they tried not to, but I don't think they could help it. But they have a bug popper. And one time I was sitting on a table, and right behind my back was their bug popper, and that bug popper went off, and apparently my body jolted. They couldn't help but laugh. But anyway, I was messed up for quite a while. But anyway, so getting back to the story, I told you I'd jump around a little bit. But the thing about it is that during the dream, I actually do feel like I went to heaven. But it's like my daughter told me, I was pretty close to death quite a few times. So who's to say I wasn't? But the evil I saw, I'm telling you, people, you don't want to be here during that time. You don't want to be here. You don't even want to take that chance because it's going to be horrific. It's I I really hope that my children are listening. I really hope that my grandchildren listen because this world is not going to get better, and it's not going to get any better. It's going to get much worse. And that's the sad part about it. It's really sad. But, you know, I think through it all of us, you know, this dream opened up my eyes a lot. You know, it almost took me out. During my comas, during my stay in the hospital, the day I went to the hospital, God gifted me my grandson, Jackson. My son called me up. Apparently, I don't remember it, but he called me up and said, "Dad, you're going to be a grandpa." And and I guess maybe he told me I was a grandpa. And I said, "Son, I'm on my way to the hospital in the ambulance. I have COVID," or something like that. My son could tell the story. And then December 23rd, my daughter had a baby, boy, John Cecil. And I was so blessed to have two grandbabies to survive COVID. So that's why I'm giving God everything in my life, every little bit. And that's why I'm going to continue to do. You know, a lot of people don't get those second chances. But boy, did he open up my mind and did he give me the greatest gift of all. Whatever he tells me to do, I'm going to do it, no matter how long it takes. I've got some really good friends. I've got some really good support group. I've got some really good people who I work with. I just being in a coma was tough, but being in that coma also opened up my eyes and opened up a lot in my soul. You know, I remember the day I was baptized. When I went underneath that water, I couldn't get underneath that water fast enough. It's like my dead soul. I needed to die. I wanted to die. I wanted to die so bad. I wanted my old soul just to perish. I don't think they, sometimes I wonder if they kept me under that water long enough. I really do. I just, there's sometimes I feel like going and renting a church for an afternoon, having them baptize me every hour on the hour, or every whatever you want. Just put me underneath the water at the strike and do it for every hour for 12 hours. You know, just hold me under. No, I wouldn't. Don't want to die, but you know what I'm saying. I'm just so tired right now. I'm delirious. I got to get out of here. So you guys have a good night, and I hope you enjoyed the story. And I am writing a book. uh, some questions here. I should answer some of these questions, guys. What did it feel like? It felt like a dream. I said that. It's kind of like being in a dream and not being able to wake up. I remember people and nurses and stuff like that. Yep. I apparently, yes, I did get a little hostile a few times. Yep. She made me mad. 100 and 110 pounds. Uh, I can't answer that one. I'd be in trouble. The neuropathy in my right leg, it's kind of like it feels like a bunch of needles. Feels like raw skin. Like if you get like kind of like if you get um a sunburn, the raw skin, how it feels, and then like a bunch of pins and needles. That's kind of how it feels like. But my my one of my doctors said, like, he said, like chronic pain, try to explain chronic pain to someone that's trying to explain like a toothache that never goes away. That's what chronic pain is. That'll open up your mind. Oh, I can't answer that one either. I've tried that. CBD oil doesn't work. I've tried that too. The thing about it is topical stuff doesn't get that deep. Some of it might help on some areas, but not when it's like inside your bone and stuff like that. No, marijuana doesn't do it either. I don't smoke pot. I'll tell you what really makes a lot of pain go away sometimes in my hand is if I grab like a glass of cold water and I hold my hand around it. It feels so good. It makes the pain go away. Yep. Sometimes I'll just go and put my hand under cold water. Sometimes grab some ice cubes. That feels good. Yeah, I gotta watch my feet real careful because I've tore off my toenails a couple times. Just clean the wounds, keep them from getting infected. I try to take good care of myself as much as possible. I just have 2 dogs I want to beat up right now because they're driving me insane. And speaking of which, someone asked me how Coda and Winston are doing. They're doing really well. They're been naughty lately. They've been tearing up my house. They're having tear up Dad's house parties. A veterinarian told me that my dogs have been like shredding papers and cardboard boxes, and Coda decided to shred 12 rolls of toilet paper. Yep. So, all right, one last question here. She wants to know. Okay, so Teresa is her name. She wants to know if being in a coma has changed your life. Yeah, is being in a coma changed your life, and has it changed the life of your family? Okay, it's changed my life, but my family didn't. My family didn't care one way or the other. My kids, yes, my kids didn't like seeing their dad go through it. My family, no. But I do want to mention something about my dad, though. My mom passed away before my coma. So my dad now, on the other hand, I found out some things my dad told me. My dad told me, and there are some things that happened that I will never forgive. Well, no, I can't say I forgive him, but I'm very, very ashamed at my family for, and I'm ashamed at my wife for what they did to my father. When I ended up in the hospital, they know what they did, and very ashamed of it because that was not up to them to do what they did. So we'll leave it at that. Yeah. But anyway, that's it with that. You guys have a wonderful evening. Thank you for watching. And hey, I do have a show coming up again soon, and I'm going to be actually reading from the Bible. I want to go through the book of Daniel. Daniel's been like really hard on me. One of my favorite books is Book of Daniel. And then I'm going to be going through First Peter and Second Peter. I have I'm going to be doing actually a show on that soon. So you guys have a wonderful evening. Take care. God bless everybody.